Today is episode 8 with Dr. B and the second Ask Dr. B show.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, ADDers, I'm so glad that you could join me today for my podcast show. As many of you know, I love asking questions as well as answering them. If you listened to last week's Ask Dr. B episode, you know that I realized that I've missed knowing specific questions that people have and answering them. So I added this Ask Dr. B format to meet both your needs and mine. And just so you know what's coming today, the Ask Dr. B format will have no more than 3 questions per show, answered directly via stories or a blend of both, and a favorite quote of mine. So if you have questions, here's how you can get them to me. Head over to my website, and under podcasts, you'll see 2 options on the right side of that section, voicemail and text. Click the Ask Dr. B button of your preferred method of communicating and ask your questions. I'll be notified immediately and get to work on them for next Thursday's show. And in the event that your question is outside the scope of my license or practice or knowledge base, I'll find a guest who can answer your question and have them do so on one of the regular Monday shows. Either way, you'll get answers to the best of my ability to provide them for you. And just in case you want to know what kinds of questions people have asked me in the past, here's a few examples. How can I learn to follow through on things that I don't want to do? How do I decide what to do for work when there's so many options and choices? And how do I turn off my brain at night when I need to go to sleep and I don't want to let go of the day? You know, your questions matter to me. In fact, we are definitely a curious bunch and deserve to get our questions answered. I know that I certainly have had, and I continue to have, lots and lots of questions, and I need to get them answered, or else I spin or I ruminate on them. Perhaps that's you too. And if you've been listening to any of my previous podcasts, you've heard me say that you are not what you do or don't do, that you are more than that we are not defective or less than as people, as human beings. We're just wired differently. And the difference is actually pretty cool once you have answers to your questions, once you understand what needs doing by you, and you have the tools to get yourself where you want to go. And it's my hope that you're going to get some of what you need here. And remember, I'm a work in progress just like you. I've learned a lot about how to quiet my challenges and make the most of my gifts once I got the information I needed. And I trust that you will too once you get what you need. Before I get to the questions and answers, I have a question for you. And you've heard it before if you're a regular listener. It's about your wins and your state of mind. I can't emphasize this enough. You are the meaning maker of your life. You see the glass half empty or half full, depending on the meaning that you make of the water level in the glass. You know, in the first 3 episodes, I talked a lot about wins and my little course, The Magical Power of Wins. So have you been taking time to look for your wins? Notice them? Celebrate them? Share them with others who appreciate what a big deal they are for you and celebrate with you? Are you doing this every day? I sure hope so, because there is truly magic in all of this. And just in case you've forgotten what I mean by wins, they're those little things that happen every day that are good things, positive things in the bigger picture of your life, and yet they go unnoticed, unacknowledged, and uncelebrated by you. It takes shifting your mindset, and it's totally worth it. And please, don't be the person that continues to tell yourself that it's pointless to reward yourself for the necessities of life, what's expected of you, because that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, those are the very things that deserve to be celebrated, so it becomes easier to do them consistently and is more enjoyable each and every time you do. So what's it going to be today? If you exercised, it's a win. If you cleaned out your cat's litter box, it's a win. If you saw a piece of trash on the ground and you picked it up and you threw it away, it's another win. If you volunteered to help someone and you actually followed through, that's a win. If you emptied your trash cans before they were overflowing, it's a win. You get the point. Celebrate all of them. And none of this half-hearted celebrating. You need to mean it. Exaggerate your emotions. Yes, wow, awesome. And certainly remember to celebrate the big wins too. It's just that they happen less often, and so celebrating daily wins makes a difference faster in your life because of the frequency. Let's shift gears now. Today's episode is all about answering the questions that you have about issues or challenges that you experience as an adult living with ADHD and offering you hope. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. I want to thank you, my listeners, for today's questions on these 3 topics: managing time or yourself in time, addiction and impulsivity, and you are not alone.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, grade free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD in today's world. You know, there are a lot of different reasons why you have the questions that you do. It's possible that you have lots of misinformation or no information, or you're missing steps or strategies or a philosophy or an understanding of yourself well enough to know what to do to improve the quality of your life. Everyone's reasons are different, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here to answer what I can for you. I'm going to share each question with you, share a little about the topic, offer my point of view about what I hear within the question, and my response to each question, which includes an action step to take. Yep, there's an action step for each question because just hearing an answer isn't enough. You need to take action or nothing changes. So don't let yourself off the hook. You do have the ability to respond to your needs, and I hope at least one of these topics or questions will resonate with you and be of benefit. So let's keep going. Thank you to Brenda in California for the first topic of managing time or yourself in time. She asks, why do I have such resistance to managing me in time? Why do I love to get lost in things such as reading and listening to music? First, thanks so much for your question, Brenda. And resistance is such an interesting phenomena. With lives that always seem full and perhaps overflow from one day to the next, time management, or rather managing yourself within time, can feel like it's all about work and more work, because that's what most people seem to focus on, getting things done, or rather getting work done. And if that's the case, it's not hard to understand how resistance would surface, because where's the fun? Imagine how it would feel if the goal of managing yourself within time is to make sure that you have plenty of time for fun things and restorative activities. Just a thought. Back to resistance. When people resist doing something, I envision them pushing back against something that doesn't feel right, or the timing isn't right, or something is off, and that's why the pushback. It's often because not all parts of them, aspects of them, are in agreement about the decision that's being resisted. I've learned to look at resistance, or my resistance, as a message, one that tells me that something isn't okay with all parts of me. And the same with others that I work with. It's important to make sure that all parts of that person are in agreement with a decision in order to avoid resistance. When I talk about parts of a person, I'm referring to aspects of a person, like the little kid part, or the rebellious part, or the shy part, or the organizer part, for example. I think Virginia Satir was the first to refer to this type of work. She called them parts parties. For a parts party, you would invite maybe 4 to 6 parts, typically you as an observer, and a wise part, the resistant part, maybe the organized part, and the overachiever part. And the gathering would be to hear from the resistant part first and come to understand, what is the resistance about? Be respectful and listen carefully to the experience and the feelings of the resistant part. Remember, it's important to seek to understand first before pushing for personal agendas. Then the other parts would be able to respond to the resistant part by asking clarifying questions to gain an even greater understanding of the need for resistance. Perhaps the resistant part senses something that the other parts aren't aware of and needs them to pay attention to a possible problem. Remember, a structure or a schedule needs to serve all the needs of all the parts of you, not just the work-life parts. In the context of managing yourself within time, I'd like to reflect a few things that I hear in your questions. And mind you, I have no attachment to being right here, just what occurs to me, and I stand corrected if I'm off base. Why do I love getting lost in activities such as reading and listening to music? It sounds a little like it's not okay to just let yourself get lost in something that you love. Resist managing you might not be the issue. Rather, resist forcing yourself into a structure or a schedule that doesn't fit you very well might be an issue. Now to your actual question. What comes to mind first is whether or not you encounter resistance to managing yourself in time with all matters of your life or only certain ones. And if you feel like you don't have the time or get to make the time that you want for the implied luxuries of life, such as reading and listening to music. A structure needs to be built for the benefit of all those that it supports and serves. And that means that all parts need to be consulted about their needs before the structure is put in place and activated. As to why you have so much resistance to managing yourself within time, it depends if this is in everything or only in some things. If it's in everything, we might want to take a look at what part of you objects to you being managed. If this part wants to be free as a free spirit, like a kid or a teenager, and doesn't want the responsibilities of adulthood, then the idea of being managed within time would be resisted, of course. If it's only with certain things, then perhaps those things that you are saying that you need to manage yourself better within time are about being important to one part of you, but not to others. Here's some questions I would be asking the various parts of you. What does the part of you that wants to run an efficient and effective life need? And even before that, what does it mean to her that her life is efficient and effective? What does that look like? What is the benefit of it in her mind? What does she hope to gain? And what does the part of you that resists managing you in time need? Is she upset and resisting because there's nothing on the schedule or in the structure that's fun and relaxing and enjoyable to her? Are the only things that you're putting on the schedule to manage yourself within time and meet the work needs part of life only work-related items? If so, then the resistance might be that you're so set on managing yourself within time, yet you aren't including anything fun and relaxing where you're managing yourself within time for this downtime, as well as the work-related necessities of life. Check in that all parts of you are in agreement with the goal and the direction of your life. Be sure to step back from your goals and the picture of your life in your mind and externalize it so you can see it more clearly. When we try to see things within ourselves instead of externalizing them, they often lack the clarity that externalizing them brings. Transitioning to our next question. Thank you to Danny in California for the second topic of addiction and impulsivity. He asks, addiction and impulsivity can be a devastating combination. Are those with ADHD at a higher risk statistically for drug and alcohol addiction than the general population? Thanks for your question, Danny. And the short answer to your question is yes. If we consider the three core symptoms of ADHD as inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, we can see that the filtering or buffering mechanisms are impacted in those with ADHD. In the context of your question, inattentiveness can be translated to an inability to see consequences of actions, of course made worse by both hyperactivity and impulsivity. But staying with inattentiveness, not being focused on the downside of gaining immediate satisfaction, whether it's from excessive surfing on the internet, or overeating, or binge shopping, or drugs and alcohol, and instead being focused on the good feeling, the sense of relief, the distraction, or whatever the immediate gratification is. And it only perpetuates the self-medicating or escape behaviors. The statistics I've heard for years, which may or may not be true, is that there is roughly a 40% higher risk factor of addiction than those without ADHD. Rather, let me state it differently. Those who aren't diagnosed and don't receive some sort of treatment, whether that's therapy, coaching, skills building, or perhaps medication, are at greater risk than those that don't have ADHD or those that do have ADHD but have received some form of treatment. And it's said that alcohol and marijuana are the two substances that are most commonly abused and used for self-medicating. The hyperactivity that shows up externally earlier on in life still exists internally with a very active or hyper brain, referred to as cognitive hyperactivity. And substances are often used to calm down a hyper brain. With the impulsive element of ADHD comes poor judgment and perhaps an approach to life that's more like act now and think about it later. If you're bored, check out, rather than learn to manage the feelings of boredom and understand what's generating them. Other than the three core symptoms of ADHD, there are other reasons for the higher risk factor for addiction. With a higher incidence of depression and anxiety and low self-esteem, poor academic performance, underachieving, underemployment, unemployment, or social awkwardness, there's an increased desire for comfort. And with major life changes such as marriage, having a child, starting a new job, or moving to a new location, comes additional stressors that need to be managed. And when the management tool is substance, the risk of that leading to addiction is present. Without the tools or skills to self-soothe, many are seeking their soothing from substances. Whether this is something you struggle with is unclear. That said, for you and all my listeners today, take the time to learn what your triggers are for increased stress and have a management system in place for that stress in advance of experiencing it. There are many tools for stress management, such as regular exercise, which seems to help to keep the brain stimulated and boredom at bay. Cultivating rituals of self-soothing, such as meditation or journaling or yoga, can go a long way to help manage emotions and impulsivity so that mood-altering substances or behaviors have less of a pull. And once addicted, many are able to get clean and sober, sometimes for brief periods of time, though. not unlike many other challenges that those with ADHD experience. It's the long-term maintenance or consistency that's a real problem. And obviously, this isn't just a problem with addictions. It is a problem with being consistent with just about anything. So whether your struggles in life are mind, body, spirit, or a mixture of all three, it's not for us to judge that one is better or worse than another. It just is what it is. What's most important is that we honor what is and seek to understand it so that we can learn what's truly going on beneath the superficial appearances and address the core issues for long-term well-being. Transitioning to our next question. Thank you to Emmy in California for the third topic of You Are Not Alone. She shares and then asks, growing up with the symptoms, not knowing anything about ADHD or any such brain wiring issues, growing up in a country other than America where mental health or brain issues are far behind and taboo, I've always felt confused, frustrated, crazy, lazy, odd, excluded, awkward, but most importantly, alone during my down, dark moments. Of all the feelings, I now believe if we could at least change the feeling of alone, we could get people to start making a positive change in their lives. How can we shine a light on this issue of ADD as people with ADD? What can we do to bring this issue to every home so that one day when an ordinary person from a small town or country comes across a family member or a coworker or someone from their faith or their first child who is struggling with issues because their brain is wired differently and is feeling alone, they would know to offer them a helping hand instead of judging them negatively and moving on. Because the only thing that keeps me going is the courage, because I feel that I'm not alone because of the community that's been created. And as long as I'm making small steps forward, I can change my life to what I want it to be. Is there a hotline for ADD so that people with ADD can call in when they feel alone? How can we start one? First of all, thank you, Emmy, for all that you shared and for your questions. In the context of what you shared, what I hear is worldwide ignorance. The ignorance or lack of readily available knowledge for all people is a real problem. I periodically contact various licensing boards to inquire about educational requirements with regard to ADHD and specifically adult ADHD. Each time I call, I hear the same thing. There's no academic requirement and no licensing requirement for professionals to have training in this area. That means even if someone reaches out for help to a mental health professional, they most likely won't be speaking with someone who will consider the possibility of ADHD amongst other things. There's also the challenge of the symptoms of ADHD being presented in such a way that it sounds like everyone has it, which is not the case. Now to your two questions. Can we make ADHD a household word or thought so that it's not overlooked in each and every person on the planet who might be suffering unknowingly? And is there a hotline for ADD where you can call when you're feeling alone? Let me start with your second question first. I did a little research and found that there are sites that list themselves as helplines. However, they're mainly sites that'll send out information about ADHD, not a place where you can actually reach someone to talk to. I haven't done extensive search. However, this is what I've learned so far. In the meantime, I've secured a domain name, ADHDhotline.com, and will explore how such a service can be provided. Most likely started at a grassroots level, just like many other self-help communities, such as 12-Step. To your initial question about getting the word out so that no one is overlooked, I think the place to start is with the destigmatization of ADHD. As I've said on most every podcast, we are not broken or defective as people. We're wired differently. And truth be told, we are all wired differently. Each and every person is a unique manifestation of human being, no two being the same. If we're going to focus on destigmatizing ADHD, let's go bigger and focus on destigmatizing all conditions that occur above the neck, so to speak. In all the years of working in medicine while attending university, I never heard the kind of stigma attached to physical conditions like I do to mental, emotional, or psychological ones. All things being equal, should we be saying horrible things about people's organs not performing their respective functions correctly, and hence leading to various different diseases or illnesses? Should we view a person as defective because they have a defective heart valve that's sloppy and floppy and flopping around when it opens and closes, such as a mitral valve prolapse? Both of these examples are ridiculous and exaggerated. There is no blame to be handed out to the physical body and the person who has the physical condition. How is it that we are so quick to judge the people with conditions that affect their mind or emotions? Many have been told things like, just get over it, or pull yourself together, or that's ridiculous to be feeling that way. Seriously? What right do we have to talk to anyone that way? We are who we are, and we have what we have, plain and simple. It's pointless to judge it and speak harshly to those who suffer, as we're only adding to their suffering. Instead, let's start with listening with curiosity rather than criticism, to understand the difficulties and challenges, and then take steps to remedy the suffering. That's it for our 3 questions today. I want to thank Brenda, Danny, and Emmy again for their questions for the Ask Dr. B format. Remember, your questions matter to me. If I'm going to help make a difference in your lives, I need to know what your challenges are, what you're struggling with. Help me to be there for you by reaching out with your questions. Now a favorite quote. Claudia Black said, "Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do." The question I have for you at this point of our journey together is, what have you been willing to do but not done? And is today the day you get into action and do it? I appreciate you showing up to listen today and in the future. New episodes will be available twice a week now, on Mondays, where I'll be talking about such compelling topics as analysis paralysis, making friends, and more hot topics, as well as lining up guests to bring more great insights to you. And on Thursdays for Ask Dr. B, where the questions you submit to me will be answered to the best of my ability. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and keep coming back. In fact, if you received value today, please rate the show and write a thoughtful review on iTunes so I know that I'm meeting your needs. It means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little better every time we get together. Remember to subscribe so you receive every new episode as soon as it's available. And then be sure to get over to my website to get your show notes and learn about other services. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.